October 4th, 1965. The American Southwest. A place where the desert meets the sky and where the law starts to blur. El Paso, Texas. The air is thick and hot, even long after the sun has gone down. The border between the United States and Mexico is just a line on a map, a shallow river, a dusty bridge. But for one man, on this specific night, it was about to become the edge of a cliff. A black Cadillac pulls up near the international bridge. The engine idles for a moment before the driver steps out. He is tall, casting a long shadow under the flickering streetlights. He is dressed entirely in black, like a shadow himself. His jaw is clenched tight. His eyes, hidden behind dark sunglasses even at night, are vibrating with a nervous, electric energy. This is Johnny Cash, but this is not the revered elder statesman of country music we know today. This is not the grandfatherly figure from the Hurt video. This is the 1965 Johnny Cash, a man on fire, a superstar who is simultaneously at the peak of his fame and the absolute bottom of his soul. Welcome to Behind the Legends. Tonight, we are peeling back the curtain on one of the darkest, most chaotic nights in music history. We are not here to talk about the hit records or the sold-out concerts. We are here to talk about the crime. This is the untold story of the night Johnny Cash tried to smuggle a pharmacy's worth of illegal drugs across the border, walking straight into an FBI ambush designed to take him down. To understand why one of the most famous men in America was acting like a common mule in a dirty border town, we have to understand the monster that was riding on his back. By the mid-60s, Johnny Cash was not merely using drugs, he was powered by them. He was running on a chemical engine that wouldn't let him stop. Amphetamines, bennies, dexies, uppers, they were his fuel. They allowed him to play 300 shows a year, drive all night between gigs, and write songs in a manic burst of energy. They made him feel invincible. They whispered to him that he was faster than the cops, smarter than the law, and invisible to consequences. But then there were the downers, the barbiturates, the pills he needed just to crash after being awake for 3 days straight. He was a walking chemical experiment, a man constantly vibrating between extreme highs and crushing lows. He believed the rules of ordinary men didn't apply to the man in black. On that fateful day, the monster needed feeding. Cash left his hotel and took a taxi across the bridge into the neon-soaked chaos of Juarez, Mexico. Juarez in the 60s was a playground for vice, a place where you could buy anything if you had the cash. Cash didn't go sightseeing. He went to a specific address, met a contact in a back alley where money changed hands under the cover of darkness. The package he received was staggering. It wasn't a handful of pills for personal use. It was 668 dexedrine capsules and 475 Equinil tablets, more than 1,000 pills, enough to kill a normal man 10 times over. And here is where the arrogance of addiction kicks in. A professional smuggler would have been careful. They would have taped the drugs to their body, hidden them in the lining of a coat, or used a false bottom in a bag. Not Johnny Cash. He was too big to fail. He was too famous to be stopped. He opened his guitar case, his prized Gibson, the very tool of his trade, and simply dumped the bags of pills inside, stuffing them into the hollow body of the instrument, right under the strings. He snapped the latches shut. Click, click. He thought it was easy. He thought he had pulled it off. With the guitar case in hand, he turned back toward the American border, walking with that long, confident, drug-fueled stride. But he didn't know that he was never alone. The tip-off had already been made. Perhaps a jealous rival, perhaps a paid informant in Juarez. We may never know who made the call.
What we do know is that on the American side of the bridge, the trap was already set. Federal narcotics agents and U.S. Customs officers were waiting in the shadows, checking their watches, watching the man in black walk straight into their net. The bridge is long. The walk is quiet, save for the distant sounds of Juarez nightlife. Imagine the sound of his boots on the pavement. Click, 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 each step bringing him closer to disaster. He reaches the U.S. Customs checkpoint. The officer in the booth looks up, perhaps recognizing the face, perhaps just doing his job. He asks the standard question, the question that has trapped thousands before him. Do you have anything to declare? Johnny Cash, high as a kite, his heart pounding against his ribs like a hammer, stares at the officer through his black sunglasses and delivers the lie that would trigger the avalanche. No, just me and my guitar.
Step aside, Mr. Cash. We need to check that case. The words hung in the hot night air. Before Cash could protest, before he could use his charm or his fame, the shadows came alive. U.S. Customs agents and federal narcotics officers swarmed him from all sides. There was no escape. The trap had snapped shut. They took the guitar case from his grip. Cash stood there, watching, vibrating with nervous energy, his mind racing 1,000 miles an hour. An agent laid the case on the metal inspection table. He popped the latches. Click, click. He lifted the lid. The evidence was undeniable. There was the beautiful Gibson guitar, but underneath it and stuffed inside the sound hole were bags upon bags of pills. Hundreds of amber bottles and plastic bags. It looked less like a musician's gear and more like a traveling pharmacy. Most people, caught red-handed with felony amounts of narcotics, would crumble. They would beg, they would cry, they would say, "Do you know who I am?" or "Please, my life is over." They would try to make a deal. Not Johnny Cash. This is the moment where the man separates from the myth and the badass legend is truly born. When the agents looked at him with disgust and accusation, Cash didn't shrink. He looked right back at them with a sneer. He was hostile. He was sarcastic. He acted not like a caught celebrity, but like a captured soldier behind enemy lines who refuses to give up information. They handcuffed him. The metal cuffs bit into his wrists. They dragged him to the federal courthouse in El Paso. The press, somehow alerted almost instantly, was waiting. As he was led out of the car, flashbulbs popped in his face like lightning bolts. The photo from that night is iconic. Johnny Cash, in handcuffs, surrounded by agents in suits, looking at the camera not with shame, but with a terrifying, defiant glare that seemed to say, "You think this can stop me?" They threw him in a holding cell. The adrenaline from the arrest and the massive amount of pills in his system were still raging in his blood. He was like a caged tiger. He didn't sit in the corner and weep. He paced, he shouted at the guards, he cursed the walls. In a fit of pure, chemically induced rage, he kicked the steel bars of the cell door with all his might. He kicked it so hard that he shattered his own toe. The pain must have been excruciating, shooting up his leg, but he didn't stop screaming. He felt like the whole world was against him, and he was ready to fight the whole world, even if it meant breaking his own bones. The agents tried to interrogate him. Where did you get the pills? Who are you supplying? Are you selling these? Cash's answer? Stony silence, or bitter insults. He wasn't a snitch, and he wasn't a victim. He owned his chaos. The next day, the fog began to clear and the reality set in. He stood before a federal judge. The charges were serious: smuggling and possession of narcotics, a felony. This wasn't a parking ticket. This could mean years in a federal penitentiary. It could mean the end of his career, the end of his freedom. But Cash stood tall in his black suit, his toe throbbing in his boot. The judge looked at him. Perhaps he saw the immense talent being wasted. Perhaps he saw the broken man behind the defiant eyes. Perhaps he just didn't want to be the judge who sent Johnny Cash to prison. In a stroke of incredible luck, or perhaps destiny, Cash was given a suspended sentence and a large fine. The judge gave him a stern lecture and told him
to get clean. But here is the ultimate irony of this story. This arrest, which should have destroyed his career in conservative 1960s America, did the exact opposite. It exploded it. The public didn't turn their backs on him, they loved him more. Why? Because it proved that he wasn't a fake. The shiny pop stars of the era were smiling on TV and pretending to be perfect. But Johnny Cash? He was real. He was flawed. He was battling demons just like they were. He was an outlaw, not just in his songs, but in his life. By getting caught, he proved that the I'm the Man in Black persona wasn't a costume. It was a uniform he earned the right to wear. He walked out of that courthouse with a broken toe, a criminal record, and a legend that was bigger than ever. Most men would have hidden in shame after such a public humiliation. Cash wrote songs about it. He incorporated the experience, the handcuffs, the cold steel of the cell, the judgment of the agents, into his art. He didn't learn to behave that night. The drugs would continue for years, but he learned that he could survive the worst self-inflicted wounds. The FBI thought they had caught a criminal, but all they did was cement the legend of the Man in Black. Johnny Cash fought the law, and in a weird way, he won. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the criminal history of a music icon, hit that like button. Subscribe to Behind the Legends for more tales of the outlaws who shaped our world. Leave a comment below. Do you think Cash got off easy because of his fame, or was it a turning point he needed? Until next time, walk the line, but watch your step.